Imagine your wedding day being sabotaged by your own sister, only for her to later demand a piece of your happiness, your unborn child. Would you forgive her or shut the door forever? My wedding was ruined by my sister, and now, due to her difficulty conceiving, my parents want her to share my baby. For context, my sister Kyle, 28, convinced our parents and some relatives not to attend my wedding. She felt it was inappropriate for me to marry her while she was divorcing. To turn people against me, she resorted to lies and rumors, as the truth alone wasn't enough. My spouse and I recently announced on social media that I am 25 and in my second trimester of pregnancy. My parents and Kyle learned of my situation, and after 3 years of silence, they attempted to reconnect. The reason? Unfortunately, Kyle is infertile and unable to conceive. Despite several unsuccessful IVF attempts, she remains determined to try again. Kyle currently feels that surrogacy and adoption are not ideal options for her. Since I'm expecting a child, my parents thought it would be helpful to reconcile with Kyle, allowing her to bond with a child not directly related to her. They even suggested that the child have 2 mothers, believing this would provide me with additional support. My parents really only want to pretend to be a happy family, now that Kyle is unable to have children of her own. During the call, I was able to see through their phony politeness. I informed them that I would not accept this idea and that it was completely irrational to expect me to comply. The fact that they even thought I would consider allowing Kyle to pretend to be the mother of my future child was absurd, to be honest. I explained that they should have done it because they genuinely loved me and were sorry for how they treated me, not because they wanted to give Kyle a toy and I was having a baby. They objected to my statement, saying that Kyle was ready to work for her future niece or nephew and that they were just helping because they knew I would need help when the baby was born. They said I was being too harsh and that it was all perfectly innocent. I replied that my husband and in-laws were already providing me with all the assistance I required because I was the mother. They should keep avoiding me in the future if it was easy for them to do so in the past. Here's where I might have gone too far. I suggested that Kyle might not be able to conceive because she was a horrible person and wouldn't be a good mother. My parents, a few family members, and of course Kyle herself sent me a ton of texts after that call. They all demand that I should apologize to them, claiming that what I said was needless and unkind. I shouldn't kick people when they're already down, they say. The issue is that I can still clearly recall every event leading up to my wedding, and I harbor deep animosity toward Kyle for her actions. I find it hard to feel bad about what I said. To put things in perspective, while I was organizing my wedding, Kyle had already been married for 2 years. Prior to their marriage, she and her ex-husband had been dating for 3 years, and she had always understood his desire to live a childless life. When they began talking about their future after a year of dating, it was among the first things she brought up to our parents. Even though I was in the room at the time, they continued their chat as usual, acting as though I wasn't there. Another problem is that even as a child, Kyle and I have never gotten along. She has always been the beloved daughter of our parents. When we were younger, we used to quarrel a lot, but eventually we just learned to ignore one another. She therefore knew for a fact that she wanted children in the future, even if she was telling our parents that her ex-boyfriend preferred a childless existence. In the end, they agreed to bring up the subject again when they were married, and she hoped that by then, he would have changed his mind. She tried to persuade him to have children, but he refused to change his views, and they started fighting a lot. She would frequently look very distraught at family gatherings and tell about how hard it was to stay with him all the time. Her decision to wed a man who had made it apparent that he didn't want children was, in my opinion, her fault. It was she who thought she could make him reconsider. However, she had no right to hold him responsible when she was unable to. Naturally, I kept all of this to myself since I knew it would just cause more problems. I tried to persuade him for a few months before my parents informed me that Kyle had returned to live with them permanently following a heated argument with her husband. They told me there was no way out of it at this point. My spouse and I had just begun making deposits for our wedding at this point. After almost 4 years of dating, we had been engaged for a few months. We had waited until we were both comfortable in our employment, even though we had been prepared for marriage for a while. My parents therefore told me that they wanted me to put off my wedding forever when they told me that Kyle and her husband were going to divorce. They didn't want me to marry Kyle at the same time she was divorcing in order to offend her. They said that Kyle already had it difficult because she had to postpone her intentions to have a baby. They said that I should not forward with my wedding in order to spare her feelings.